Hello everyone and welcome to Dark Crime by Women. I am Marielle, your host. If you love true crime stories told through the lens of the women who committed them, you are in the right place. Each week we will dive deep into the dark, twisted and sometimes heartbreaking stories of women who crossed the line between victim and villain. Today's story is about Aileen Wuornos, one of America's most infamous female serial killers. Her life, her crimes, and her tragic downfall have been the subject of countless documentaries and movies. But today we are digging into the real story, the truth behind the woman who became known as the Damsel of Death. Aileen Wuornos was born in 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. Her early life was steeped into tragedy and neglect. Her parents were extremely young. Her mother was only 14 years old and her father 19, who was later imprisoned for a serious crime, such abducting a 7-year-old girl and sexually abusing her. He was completely absent from Aileen's life. When Aileen was only 4 years old, her mother Diane abandoned her and her brother Keith, leaving them in custody of her grandparents. While this might have offered the appearance of stability, the environment inside the Wuornos home was far from safe and nurturing. Laurie was a World War II veteran and the dominant figure in the household. He was known to be strict, controlling, and frequently abusive, both physically and verbally. Later on, Aileen's interviews described him as a violent alcoholic who would explode in fits of rage and punish her harshly for even minor misbehavior. He was suspected to have sexually assaulted Aileen during her youth, but this was never been officially proven. Laurie's cruelty, emotional detachment, and alcoholism created an environment of constant fear, which created a bad foundation that would deeply scar Aileen's emotional development. On the other hand, Britta, Aileen's grandmother, was described as a frail woman struggling with alcohol and health issues. Unluckily, her husband, she wasn't physically abusive, but she was emotionally unavailable for sure. Her dependence of alcohol and lack of intervention left Aileen and her brother without any real protection or comfort. Britain gave up control over her household, allowing her husband Laurie's abusive behavior to be unchecked. Discipline was enforced through fear and affection was virtually non-existent. The combination of Laurie's aggression and Britta's absence created a toxic environment where Aileen learned early that trust and safety did not exist. This upbringing not only fractured her sense of self-worth, but also fueled her deep mistrust of authorities, men, and the world around her. As she grew up, the abuse, both emotional and physical, became unbearable. At the age of 11 years old, she began trading sexual favor for food, cigarettes, and shelter. And at the age of 15, she got pregnant after being assaulted by a family friend. The baby boy was given up for adoption just right after the birth, and Aileen never saw the child. Another tragedy struck her life. Around the same time, her grandmother passed away, and loss removed even the minimal sense of care or stability that she had. And her grandfather, struggling with the loss of his wife, couldn't handle two teenagers, and he made a horrible choice to force her and her brother out of the house. After being cast out of her home as a teenager, Aileen quickly slid into a life of petty crime and survival hassles. Homeless and alone, she survived by living in the woods near the childhood home and survival work on the street. This period of abandonment, abuse, and survival shaped her life, setting the stage for the infamous path she would take as one of America's most discussed female criminals. Now, I would like to see the psychological side of early life that was signed by extreme neglect and abandonment. This kind of trauma can severely disrupt emotional regulation, attachment formation, and self-identity. Evaluation and interviews suggested that Wuornos displayed traits of borderline and antisocial personality disorder. Her behavior showed a path of emotional instability, impulsivity, and intense anger and paranoia. Her lack of empathy toward her victims and her manipulative behavior during interrogation aligned Aileen to antisocial personality disorder. However, unlike many serial killers driven purely by power and control, Aileen's action appeared rooted in survival instinct and rage, not sadistic pleasure. Her first arrest was in 1970s, and the charges was drunk driving and fire a weapon from a moving car. She also had charges for theft, forgery, and using stolen checks. In 1976, Aileen attempted a different life. She landed to Florida and married a wealthy 69-year-old yacht club president. But the marriage quickly fell apart after Aileen got into a bar fight and assaulted her husband. The same year, she was arrested for assault and battery, stealing, and identity fraud. Here in Florida, after her marriage ended, Aileen worked as a highway sex worker, moving from town to town, trying to survive on her own terms. During this time, Wuornos was arrested again for stealing in a convenience store where she stolen only $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes. Then her life took a different turn. In 1986, Aileen met Taria Moore. Taria worked as a maid in an hotel. They met in a gay bar called Zodiac in Daytona Beach, and they started an intense romantic relationship, even though Aileen was inexperienced in romantic relationship with women. But she quickly developed strong feelings for Taria, and for the first time, Aileen felt loved and accepted. She had spent so many years feeling like an outsider, but now with Taria, who truly cared for Aileen, she finally felt she belonged to someone and a sense of family which she never had that before. She was eager to express her affection and commitment in assuring Taria that she would look after her. Aileen made an effort to secure a normal job, however, her results were not successful. With the limited money, they faced the challenge of covering expenses such food and motels. And Aileen didn't know what to do at this point. She was afraid to lose Taria for not fulfilling the promise of taking care of her. As the days passed by and their financial situation became more and more difficult, Aileen felt the weight of her promise crashing down on her, and she couldn't bear the thought of letting it down and losing the one person who showed love, probably for the first time in her life. So she was desperate for a solution and unfortunately decided to turn to the streets. Taria was aware of how Aileen was getting the money, but she was in the dark about how Aileen was ending those encounters. Here, the story turns into a twisted case full of lies and crimes. After those encounters, Wuornos and Taria Moore sold stolen items in pawn shops, telling Taria that her clients gave her those items for free. But by 1990, Taria Moore had become suspicious, if not fully aware of Aileen's activities, so she moved back with her family in Pennsylvania. Aileen was desperate, but at this point, Taria was afraid of her. Aileen's first known case was Richard Mallory. In 1989, a 51-year-old electronics store owner from Clearwater. Wuornos informed the police that Mallory offered her a ride, took her to a remote location, and proceeded to physically and sexually abusing her, and engage in sodomized her against her will. As a result, she acted in self-defense by shooting him multiple times. Between 1989 and 1990, 7 men were found shot and killed across Central Florida. And each recovery, the story grew darker. In the meantime, police connected the dots between Mallory's case to other 7 unsolved ones. Also, police discovered items belonging to Richard Mallory to a local pawn shop with the receipt showing Aileen's fingerprint and signature. Aileen Wuornos and her girlfriend Taria Moore are now suspected of those crimes. In January 1991, Aileen was arrested in a bar in Florida, and the police tracked down Taria in Pennsylvania. Taria agreed to cooperate with police in exchange for immunity. She made recorded phone calls, and in those calls, Aileen admitted to those crimes. The victims are 7. Richard Mallory, David Spears, construction worker. Charles Carskadon, rodeo worker. Troy Burress, delivery driver. Charles Humphrey, retired Air Force officer. Peter Sims, never found the body but recovered the car. Walter Antonio, truck driver. Aileen's method was the same in all 7 crimes. She flagged men down offered sex, then pulled the gun out and killed them. She robbed them, drove their cars until the gas was over, and then ditched the car and the body. Throughout the trial, Aileen claimed that the murders were acts in self-defense, that each man attacked her and assaulted her. But prosecutors painted her as a cold-blooded killer who used the pretense of sex to lure her victims, rob them, and eliminate the witnesses. Her confessions were chaotic, emotional, and deeply disturbing. Some saw her as a monster, and others saw her as a broken woman by years of trauma, abuse, and mental illness. As her case unfolded, Aileen's behavior became increasingly erratic, lashing out at reporters, lawyers, and even the judge. She was sentenced to death in 1992, and after 10 years in prison, she was executed in 2002 by lethal injection at the Florida State Prison. Her final words were extravagant as the life she lived. I would like to say I'm sailing with the rock and I will be back, like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6, like the movie Big Mothership and all. I will be back. Even today, Aileen Wuornos remains a symbol of rage and tragedy, a product of her environment and warnings about what happens when pain, poverty, and abuse go unanswered. Aileen Wuornos was not a born killer, but a result of repeated trauma, neglect, and social failure. Her crimes were an extreme manifestation of survival, anger, and mistrust rather than pure malicious behavior. She exhibited overlapping symptoms of borderline and antisocial, also post-traumatic stress disorder. A volatile combination that, if left untreated, can lead to extreme violence. Her case highlights the importance of early intervention, mental health care, and social support for victims of abuse before they reach the breaking point. In conclusion, Aileen Wuornos represents intersection of trauma and crime. Her story forces us to confront how unhealed pain, when ignored, can evolve into rage capable of destroying lives, including her own. In my opinion, she was both victim and killer. And this is the story of Aileen Wuornos. What do you think? Was she a victim of circumstances or calculated killer? Let me know your thought in the comment below. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit subscribe button, and I will be back next week with another deep dive into the mind of a woman who committed a dark crime. Thanks for watching, and I am Marielle, and this is Dark Crime by Women. See you next time.